When billionaire Adrian Cole found a woman freezing to death in a bus shelter during the worst snowstorm in decades, he had no idea she would tear apart everything he thought he knew about family. Lena Carter had been thrown away like garbage by the man who promised to love her forever, all because her body couldn't give him children. But what Adrian's 3 adopted kids saw in her shattered eyes that night would change all 5 of their lives in ways none of them could predict. This is their story. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The wind screamed like something dying. Lena Carter sat hunched in the corner of the bus shelter, arms wrapped around herself so tight her fingers had gone numb. Not from the cold, though God knows it was cold enough to kill, but from holding herself together. Like if she squeezed hard enough, she could keep all the broken pieces from scattering across the frozen pavement. The suitcase at her feet was older than her marriage. $29 at a thrift store 6 years ago, back when she still believed in fresh starts. Now the zipper was held together with a safety pin, and everything she owned in the world was crammed inside. 2 sweaters, 3 pairs of jeans, underwear she'd washed in the sink this morning before Marcus. She couldn't think his name without her chest caving in. The bus shelter's plastic walls rattled with each gust. Snow came in sideways through the open ends, building up in the corners like something living, patient, waiting. The bench beneath her was metal, and it pulled the heat right out of her body, but she didn't move. Where would she go? The last bus had come and gone 20 minutes ago. Or maybe an hour. Time felt slippery. Her phone was dead. Had been since this afternoon when Marcus changed the phone plan, cut her off like pruning a dead branch. Clean, efficient, the way he did everything. "You're defective, Lena." That's what he'd said. Not broken, not unfortunate. Defective. Like a product with a manufacturing error that needed to be returned. He'd said it in the same tone he used to order lunch from his secretary. Flat. Matter of fact. No anger, which somehow made it worse. 3 hours ago, she'd been in the house they'd bought together. The 5-bedroom colonial with the garden she'd spent 2 years perfecting. The kitchen where she'd made his coffee every morning, trying to be the wife his mother thought he deserved. The bedroom where they'd tried for a baby, until the trying became an obligation, and then finally a bitter accusation every time they touched. Then the doctor's appointment. The final one. The specialist with the sympathetic eyes who'd confirmed what 4 other doctors had already said. Marcus hadn't even waited until they got home. He'd pulled over on the highway, turned to her with those blue eyes she'd once thought kind, and said, "I want children, Lena. Real children. This isn't going to work." She'd sat there in the passenger seat, winter sun making everything too bright, and felt her entire life dissolve. "We could adopt," she'd whispered. "There are options. I'm not raising someone else's mistake." He'd put the car back in drive. "I'll have my lawyer contact you. Take what you need and be out by tonight." That was it. 6 years of marriage ended on the side of Interstate 94 with semis blasting past and Christmas music playing on the radio. Some cheerful garbage about coming home for the holidays. She didn't have a home anymore. Lena pulled her coat tighter. It was Marcus's coat, actually. She'd grabbed it by accident in her daze, and it swallowed her whole. Expensive cashmere that smelled like his cologne. She should hate it, should have left it on the marble floor of his foyer. But it was warm and she had nothing else, so here she was, wrapped in the scent of the man who'd just thrown her away. A car passed, then another. Headlights cutting through the snow like searchlights, there and gone. Nobody stopped. Nobody even slowed. Why would they? Just another person at a bus stop on a December night. Nothing unusual, nothing worth noticing. Her mother would have said this was karma, punishment for something. Her mother had been big on divine retribution before the cancer took her 5 years back. No other family left now. No siblings. Her father had checked out before she could form memories of him. Marcus had liked that, she realized now. Liked that she came unattached. No messy in-laws, no obligations. Just Lena, grateful and alone, easy to discard when she stopped being useful. The shaking started in her hands and worked its way up her arms. Not cold. Not entirely. This was something else. Something that started in her chest and spread like poison. Panic, maybe. Or grief. Or the horrible realization that she had absolutely no idea what to do next. She had $243 in her purse. That was it. The joint account, Marcus's account that she'd been allowed to use was already frozen. She'd tried to withdraw cash at the ATM outside their bank, and the machine had blinked error like it was personally offended she'd attempted it. $243 in December, in a city where a decent hotel room cost more per night than she had total. A laugh bubbled up in her throat, sharp and wrong. She swallowed it down hard. If she started laughing, she might not stop. And if she didn't stop, people would notice. And if people noticed, someone might call the police or an ambulance, and she couldn't afford either. The wind picked up again, and this time she felt it in her bones. Her toes had stopped hurting 15 minutes ago, which probably wasn't good. She'd read somewhere that when you stopped feeling the cold, that's when you were really in trouble. When your body started shutting down the extremities to protect the core. Going into survival mode. What a joke. Survival mode. Like she was surviving anything. She'd been thrown away. Discarded. And the worst part, the part that made her want to scream into the howling wind, was that some broken piece of her still felt like it was her fault. Like if she'd just been different. Better. Whole. If her body had just worked the way it was supposed to, she'd be home right now, safe, wanted. You're not broken, her therapist had said last year when the fertility treatments failed for the third time. This doesn't define your worth. But it did, didn't it? Because here she was, alone in a bus shelter in a snowstorm, and the man who'd promised to love her in sickness and in health had dumped her like trash the second she couldn't give him what he wanted. Headlights again. These ones slowed. Lena's heart jumped stupidly, hopefully, before she crushed it down. Probably just someone turning around. Nobody stopped for strangers anymore. Nobody... The SUV pulled up to the curb. It was one of those huge black luxury things that cost more than most people made in a year. The kind Marcus drove to impress clients. The kind that screamed money and power and don't even think about approaching me. Lena looked away. Wrong neighborhood for her anyway. Probably lost. They'd figure it out and leave. But the engine cut off. She heard the door open. Footsteps crunching in fresh snow. "Miss?" The voice was male. Deep. Careful. She didn't look up. "Bus already came. I'm just waiting for a friend." The lie tasted like metal in her mouth. "In this weather?" A pause. "Without a phone?" Her head snapped up. How did he... The man standing a few feet away wasn't what she expected. Tall, yeah, and built like someone who had time for personal trainers. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Expensive coat that actually fit him properly. But his eyes weren't cold. They were concerned. Actually concerned. "I saw you from down the street," he said. "You've been sitting here for a while." "I'm fine." The words came out automatic, defensive. "You're shaking." "I said I'm fine." He didn't move. Behind him, the SUV's back door opened and 3 kids piled out. 2 boys and a girl, all bundled up like colorful snowmen. They stopped when they saw her, going quiet in that way kids did when they knew something was wrong but didn't have words for it. "Dad?" the girl said. She looked about 8, maybe 9. "Is she okay?" "I'm fine," Lena repeated, harsher this time. She didn't need this. Didn't need their pity or their concern or whatever this was. "Just go. I don't need help." The man, Dad apparently, crouched down slowly, getting to her eye level without getting too close. "When's the last time you ate something?" The question hit her sideways. She couldn't remember. Breakfast? Had she eaten breakfast? Everything after the doctor's office was a blur. "That's what I thought." He straightened up. "Look, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, but it's 12 degrees and dropping, there's a winter storm warning until morning, and no buses are running after 8, so you've got a choice to make." Lena's throat tightened. "What choice?" "You can stay here and freeze, or you can let me buy you dinner and get you somewhere warm for the night. No strings, no expectations, just basic human decency." "I don't know you." "Adrian Cole." He didn't offer his hand, seeming to sense she wouldn't take it. "These are my kids. Sophie, Marcus." Lena flinched at the name. "And Thomas. We were driving back from dinner when Sophie spotted you. She insisted we stop." The little girl stepped forward, her pink coat dusted with snow. "You looked sad and cold." Something in Lena's chest cracked. This tiny kid with her serious eyes and her too big heart had seen her, really seen her. Not as invisible or pathetic or defective, but as someone who needed help. I can't, her voice broke. I can't pay you back. Not asking you to. Adrian's expression didn't change. But I'm asking you to make a choice, because my kids don't need to watch someone freeze to death at a bus stop, and honestly, neither do I. It was the bluntness that did it. Not pity, not charity, just a straight-up statement of fact delivered without judgment. Lena looked at her suitcase, at the snow already covering it, at her hands, which had gone from pink to an alarming shade of white. She thought about Marcus's face when he told her to get out, about the empty house she'd never see again, about the fact that she had nowhere to go and no one to call, and maybe this stranger in his expensive coat was right. Maybe she really would freeze if she stayed here. Just for tonight, she heard herself say, and then I'll figure something out. Adrian nodded like she'd made a business deal instead of accepted charity from a complete stranger. Fair enough? He reached for her suitcase, but she grabbed it first, holding it against her chest like a shield. I can carry my own stuff. Didn't say you couldn't. He stepped back, giving her space. Car's warm. Sophie cranked the heat up before we got out. The kids were already heading back, the two boys racing each other through the snow while Sophie hung back, watching Lena with those big, serious eyes. Lena stood up. Her legs screamed in protest, stiff from sitting in the cold for so long. She stumbled, and Adrian's hand shot out to steady her, then immediately withdrew when she flinched. Sorry, he said quietly. Reflex. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The walk to the SUV felt like miles. Each step was an admission of defeat, of needing help, of being exactly as pathetic as she felt. But the alternative was freezing in a bus shelter, and even her pride had limits. The interior of the vehicle was obscenely warm. Heat blasted from the vents, and the seats were leather. Real leather, not the fake stuff. The kids had already buckled themselves in the back row, leaving the middle seat open for her. Lena climbed in, suitcase clutched on her lap, and felt the warmth start to seep into her bones. It hurt, like pins and needles everywhere at once. Adrian got in the driver's seat and glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. There's a diner about 10 minutes from here. That work? She couldn't make her voice cooperate, so she just nodded. The drive was quiet, except for the boys whispering to each other and the sound of the wipers fighting the snow. Lena stared out the window at the streets she didn't recognize, trying to figure out where she was. Somewhere on the north side, past where the buses ran regular routes. No wonder she'd been alone out there. Sophie shifted in her seat, turning to look at Lena. What's your name? Sophie, Adrian said gently. Give her some space. It's okay. Lena's voice came out scratchy. I'm Lena. That's pretty. Sophie smiled, missing a front tooth. Are you really going to be okay? The question was so earnest, so genuinely worried, that Lena felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back hard. Yeah, she lied. I'll be fine. Thomas, the older of the two boys, leaned forward. Dad always helps people. Last month he stopped to change someone's tire in the rain. Got completely soaked. Thomas. Adrian's voice carried a warning. What? You did. That's different. How? It just is. The easy back and forth between them made Lena's chest ache. This was what family sounded like, comfortable, safe. The kind of thing she'd wanted so desperately with Marcus but never quite managed to build. The diner appeared out of the snow like a beacon, one of those old-school places with vinyl booths and a neon sign that buzzed. Adrian parked and killed the engine. Everyone out, and use the buddy system. The kids scrambled out with practiced efficiency. Lena moved slower, her body still protesting the cold. Adrian appeared at her door before she could open it herself. I got it, she said. He backed off immediately. Just trying to help. I know, I'm just... She stopped. What was she? Proud? Stupid? Terrified that if she accepted too much kindness, she'd completely fall apart? Not used to it. Understanding flickered across his face. Yeah, I get that. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and fried food and normalcy. A waitress in her 50s looked up from wiping down the counter and did a double take when she saw Adrian. Mr. Cole, didn't expect to see you tonight. Hey, Marie, table for 5? Marie grabbed menus without question, leading them to a large booth in the back. The kids slid in on one side, leaving Lena to sit across from them with Adrian at the end. Coffee? Marie asked, already pulling out her order pad. Please, Lena said before she could stop herself. Black. Make it 2, Adrian added, and hot chocolate for this crew. The boys cheered. Sophie just kept watching Lena with those thoughtful eyes. When Marie left, silence settled over the table. Lena stared at the menu without seeing it. She wasn't hungry, couldn't imagine eating. But Adrian had brought her here, and the least she could do was order something. Get whatever you want, Adrian said like he'd read her mind. It's on me. I can't. Yes, you can. His voice was firm but not unkind. And before you argue, just know that my kids are watching, and if you refuse to eat, they're going to worry about you all night. So do me a favor and order something. It was manipulation, but the gentle kind. The kind that gave her an out while making it clear what he expected. Lena looked at Sophie, who was indeed watching her with concern written all over her little face. Fine, she muttered. Soup. I'll have soup. That's it? And toast. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. When Marie came back with the coffee, he ordered for everyone. Burgers for the boys, grilled cheese for Sophie, a club sandwich for himself, and exactly what Lena had asked for without trying to add to it. The coffee was hot enough to burn. Lena wrapped her hands around the mug and let it warm her from the outside in. Across from her, the kids were chattering about school and Christmas break and whether they'd get enough snow to go sledding tomorrow. Normal kid stuff. The kind of stuff she'd imagined having with children of her own someday. That thought hurt too much. She shoved it away. So, Adrian said carefully, do you have somewhere to go after this? Lena's hands tightened on the mug. I'll figure something out. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He studied her for a long moment. Hotels are booked solid. Christmas week. Even if they weren't, nothing safe is going to be cheap. She knew that. Had already done the math in her head during the silent ride over. Even the sketchy motels on the highway were running $80 a night. 3 nights would wipe her out completely. I said I'll figure it out. The words came out sharper than she intended. Sophie's face fell. Thomas and Marcus went quiet, looking between their dad and Lena like they were watching a tennis match. Adrian held up his hands. Okay, just asking. The food arrived, cutting through the tension. Lena stared at her soup. Chicken noodle, the kind that came from a can but tasted like comfort anyway. She picked up her spoon and took a bite. Then another. And suddenly she was starving, eating like she hadn't seen food in days, barely tasting it as it went down. When she looked up, everyone was watching her. Heat flooded her face. Sorry. I guess I was hungrier than I thought. Don't apologize, Adrian said quietly. Eat. So she did. Finished the soup and both pieces of toast, and even accepted a refill on coffee. The kids had relaxed again, going back to their conversation about sledding and whether Dad would let them stay up late on Christmas Eve this year. Watching them, Lena felt something she couldn't quite name. Longing, maybe. Or grief for something she'd never have. These kids were easy with each other in a way that spoke of years together. They knew Adrian's boundaries, knew when to push and when to back off. They were family in every way that mattered. And they were adopted. She'd caught it earlier when Thomas had called Adrian Dad, with that casual affection kids only used with people who'd earned it. These weren't his biological kids. He'd chosen them, built a family out of nothing. The realization made her throat tight. Marie brought the check and Adrian paid in cash, leaving a tip that made the waitress's eyes go wide. Then they were back in the SUV, headed somewhere Lena didn't know. Where are we going? She finally asked. My place, Adrian said. And before you panic, it's got 6 bedrooms. You'll have your own space, door locks, complete privacy. I'm not asking you for anything except to get through the night somewhere warm. I don't... Lena. He met her eyes in the mirror. I'm not Marcus. She froze. How did you... You flinched when I said my son's name, and you're wearing a man's coat that's 3 sizes too big. Doesn't take a genius. He paused at a red light. Whatever happened, whoever he is, I'm not him. I'm just some guy who doesn't want to explain to his kids why he let someone freeze because he was too worried about appearances. The bluntness again, it cut through all her defenses. One night, she whispered. One night, he agreed. The house wasn't a house. It was an estate. Iron gates, circular driveway, the kind of place that had a name instead of just an address. Lena felt panic rising in her chest as they pulled through the gates. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. Didn't belong anywhere near this much wealth and stability and… Breathe, Adrian said quietly. It's just a house. It's a mansion. It's where we live, that's all. The kids were already scrambling out, running toward the front door like this was any normal night. Adrian waited for Lena to make a move. She grabbed her suitcase and forced herself to walk inside. The interior was warm and surprisingly lived in. Expensive, sure, but not sterile. There were kids' drawings on the fridge, shoes scattered by the door, a stack of library books on the coffee table. It looked like a home, not a showpiece. Guest rooms upstairs, Adrian said, shrugging off his coat. Second door on the left, bathrooms attached, towels in the closet. Help yourself to whatever you need. Lena stood there, clutching her suitcase, feeling completely out of place. Sophie tugged on Adrian's sleeve. Can we have hot chocolate before bed? It's already past your bedtime. Please. It's Friday. No school tomorrow. Adrian looked at Lena. You want some? She should say no. Should go upstairs and lock herself in that guest room and try to process what the hell had just happened to her life. But the kids were looking at her with those hopeful faces, and she couldn't make herself refuse. Sure, she heard herself say. Hot chocolate sounds good, Pushcase. They'll make it through this night, but neither Adrian nor Lena knows yet that this single act of kindness will unravel everything they thought they understood about family, love, and second chances. And when morning comes, the choice Lena makes will set in motion a chain of events that will test them all in ways they never saw coming. The kitchen was bigger than Lena's entire first apartment. Marble countertops, commercial-grade appliances, an island that could seat 8. But what caught her attention were the small things. Crayon drawings held to the fridge with magnets, a chore chart with stars and check marks, a ceramic mug with "World's Okayest Dad" painted in wobbly letters. Adrian moved through the space like he actually used it, not like someone who had staff do everything. He pulled milk from the fridge, cocoa powder from a cabinet, measuring things out while the kids climbed onto stools at the island. Marshmallows? Thomas asked hopefully. In the pantry. Get enough for everyone. Thomas hopped down and returned with a bag of marshmallows that was already half empty. Sophie grabbed mugs from a lower cabinet without being asked, setting them out in a neat row. Lena stood near the doorway, still holding her suitcase, not sure where she was supposed to be or what she was supposed to do. You can put that down, Adrian said without looking up from the stove. It's not going anywhere. She set it down slowly, like it might explode if she moved too fast. Her hands felt empty without it. Dad makes the best hot chocolate, Sophie announced, settling onto a stool. He uses real chocolate, not just powder. The powder's fine, Adrian said, but yours is better. She's not wrong, Marcus, the younger Marcus, not her ex-husband, chimed in. Remember when you tried to teach us to make it and Thomas put in salt instead of sugar? Thomas threw a marshmallow at his brother. That was one time, and the containers looked the same. It tasted like ocean water. Did not. Did too. Boys, Adrian's voice was tired but fond. No food fights in the house. You know the rules. They settled down immediately, though Thomas made a face at Marcus when their dad's back was turned. Normal sibling stuff. The kind of stuff Lena used to watch on TV and wonder what it felt like to have someone who knew you that well, who could push your buttons because they'd installed half of them. She pulled out a stool at the far end of the island, keeping distance between herself and everyone else. The marble was cool under her hands. Everything in this house was high-end and expensive and so far removed from where she'd been 2 hours ago that it felt like a different universe. Adrian poured hot chocolate into mugs, the smell of it rich and sweet. Real chocolate, like Sophie said, not the packet stuff Lena used to make when she was trying to stretch a grocery budget. He slid a mug across to her, then distributed the rest to the kids. They dumped marshmallows in with abandon, Sophie adding so many hers threatened to overflow. Easy, Adrian said. That's supposed to have chocolate in it too, not just marshmallows. But marshmallows are the best part. Debatable. Lena wrapped her hands around the mug and breathed in the steam. When she took a sip, the warmth spread through her chest, sweet and dark and completely unlike anything she'd had before. It tasted expensive, tasted like care. Good? Adrian asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The kids were talking over each other now, something about a movie they wanted to watch tomorrow, and whether Dad would let them build a snow fort if the storm kept up. Adrian listened with half his attention while he cleaned up the mess on the stove, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Lena watched him, trying to figure out what his angle was. Men like him didn't just stop for strangers, didn't bring them home, make them hot chocolate, offer them guest rooms without expecting something in return. There had to be a catch. There was always a catch. But he wasn't looking at her like Marcus used to, like she was something he owned. Wasn't even really looking at her at all. His attention was on his kids, making sure they weren't spilling, weren't staying up too late, weren't eating pure sugar before bed. "All right," he said finally, rinsing out the pot. 15 more minutes, then everyone upstairs. School might be out, but bedtime isn't. A chorus of groans. "We never get to stay up," Thomas complained. "You stayed up until midnight last Saturday watching that documentary about Mars. That was educational." It was still midnight. Adrian dried his hands on a towel. 15 minutes. I'm setting a timer." He pulled out his phone and did exactly that, then leaned against the counter with his own mug of hot chocolate. He looked tired, Lena realized. Not physically, but in that bone-deep way that came from carrying weight for a long time. "How old are they?" she found herself asking. Adrian glanced up, surprised she'd spoken. "Sophie's 8. Marcus is 10. Thomas just turned 12. They're good kids. They're a handful." But his voice was warm when he said it. Loud, messy, constantly fighting over the bathroom. "But yeah, they're good." "How long have you had them?" The question came out before she could stop it. Too personal, too intrusive. But Adrian didn't seem bothered. Sophie came first, 5 years ago, then the boys a year later. He took a sip of his drink. They were in the system. Different families originally, but circumstances change. I had the space, the resources, made sense. Just like that? Nothing's just like that. His eyes met hers. But when you know something's right, you make it work. Thomas was demonstrating something to his siblings that involved a lot of hand gestures and sound effects. Sophie laughed so hard she snorted chocolate up her nose, which made Marcus crack up, which set Thomas off. The three of them dissolved into giggles. "Napkins," Adrian said, pushing a stack across the island. "Before someone makes a mess, I actually have to clean." Lena watched them wipe their faces, still laughing, and felt something crack open in her chest. This was what she'd wanted, this exact thing, the chaos and the noise and the easy affection, the feeling that she belonged somewhere, mattered to someone. Marcus had promised her that, had stood in front of 150 people and vowed to build a life with her, then discarded her the second she couldn't deliver what he wanted. "You okay?" Adrian's voice cut through her spiral. She realized her hands were shaking around the mug. "Fine," she said automatically. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." "Lena." He kept his voice low, mindful of the kids who were now arguing about whether aliens definitely existed or only probably existed. "I'm not going to push you to talk about whatever happened today, but I'm also not stupid. So if you need anything, space, silence, an extra blanket, just say so." The timer on his phone went off before she could respond. "All right, crew, upstairs. Teeth, pajamas, bed." More groaning, but they complied, sliding off their stools and stacking their mugs in the sink. Sophie paused next to Lena. "Are you going to be here in the morning?" The question hit harder than it should have. This little girl with her gap-toothed smile and her pink pajamas peeking out from under her jeans genuinely wanted to know if Lena would still be here. Like it mattered. "I don't know," Lena said honestly. Sophie considered this. "I hope you are. You seem nice." Then she followed her brothers upstairs, leaving Lena alone with Adrian in the enormous kitchen. He started loading mugs into the dishwasher, moving with practiced efficiency. "Guest room's yours as long as you need it. And before you argue, I'm not throwing you out in a blizzard. So don't bother trying to leave tonight." "I wasn't going to." "Good." He closed his dishwasher and faced her. "Look, I don't know what you're running from or what happened to put you in that bus shelter. But you're safe here. That's not a line. That's just a fact." Lena's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Helping me. You don't know me. I could be anyone." Adrian was quiet for a moment. 3 years ago, my wife died. Car accident. Quick, painless, they said, like that was supposed to make it better. He set his mug in the sink. For 6 months after, I was a disaster, barely functional. The kids were falling apart and I couldn't hold it together enough to help them because I was too busy drowning. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. One night I'm at the grocery store at 2 in the morning because I can't sleep, and the house feels too empty, and I just completely lose it in the cereal aisle. Full breakdown, sitting on the floor between the Cheerios and the Lucky Charms, crying like a kid. Lena couldn't picture it. This put-together man in his expensive house with his perfect kids falling apart in a supermarket. Manager found me, Adrian continued. Guy named Paul. Could have called security, had me escorted out. Instead, he sat down next to me on that disgusting floor and just stayed there until I could breathe again. Didn't say anything profound, didn't try to fix it, just sat with me. He met her eyes. So when Sophie saw you in that shelter and insisted we stop, I remembered Paul. Remembered what it felt like to be drowning and have someone throw you a line. That's all this is. Someone returning a favor to a stranger who needed it. The honesty in his voice made Lena's defenses crack. She wanted to argue, to insist she didn't need charity, but she was so tired of fighting. So tired of pretending she had everything under control when her entire life had imploded in the space of a single afternoon. Thank you, she whispered. Adrian nodded. Guest room's ready. Sheets are clean, bathrooms stocked. If you need anything, my room's at the end of the hall. Just knock. He headed toward the stairs, then paused. One more thing. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever brought you here, it doesn't define you. I know that probably sounds like empty bullshit right now, but it's true. Then he was gone, footsteps fading up the stairs. Lena sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by warmth and evidence of family, and let herself cry for the first time since Marcus had thrown her away. The guest room was beautiful in that understated way expensive things were. Cream walls, soft gray bedding, furniture that looked antique but probably wasn't. The attached bathroom had one of those rainfall showers, and enough counter space for an actual morning routine. Lena set her suitcase on the bench at the foot of the bed and just stood there, not sure what to do with herself. Through the window, she could see snow still falling heavy and thick, the kind that would shut down the whole city by morning. She should shower, should wash away the day and try to sleep, but she couldn't make herself move. Her body felt disconnected from her brain, operating on autopilot while her thoughts spiraled. Tomorrow she'd have to face reality. Figure out where to go, how to stretch $243 into something resembling a plan. Find a job, find housing, find a way to build a life from the wreckage Marcus had left her with. But tonight she was warm and safe and nobody was demanding anything from her. She showered eventually, standing under water so hot it turned her skin pink, using the expensive soap that smelled like lavender and something else she couldn't name. The towels were thick and soft. Everything in this house was soft. When she finally crawled into bed, the sheets were cool and smooth, the mattress exactly the right firmness. She should have fallen asleep immediately, should have been exhausted enough to just shut down. Instead, she lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her. Footsteps overhead, Adrian getting the kids to bed, probably. The creak of old pipes, the whistle of wind against the windows. She thought about Marcus, about the house they'd shared, the life they'd built, how he'd looked at her across the dinner table last week, and she'd thought everything was fine. How stupid she'd been. Her phone was still dead. She should charge it. Should check to see if he'd texted, if his lawyer had already sent the divorce papers, if anyone had noticed she was gone. But she didn't want to know, didn't want to see evidence of how little she'd mattered, how easily she'd been erased. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams she wouldn't remember. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and, for a brief disoriented moment, couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came crashing back. The bus shelter, Adrian, the kids, the huge house that wasn't hers. The clock on the nightstand read 8:30, late for her. Marcus had always insisted on 6 a.m. starts, coffee by 6:15, breakfast by 6:30, a schedule that left no room for deviation. She lay there for a while, listening. The house was quiet, but not silent. Someone was moving around downstairs. The smell of coffee drifted up through the vents. She should get up, should thank Adrian again and figure out her next move. But the bed was warm, and the world outside felt impossibly hard to face. A knock on the door made her jump. "Lena?" Sophie's voice muffled through the wood. "Are you awake?" She sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. "Yeah." "Can I come in?" What was she supposed to say? No? This was their house. She was just a temporary guest. Sure. The door opened and Sophie peeked in, still in her pajamas, hair sticking up in about 5 different directions. Dad made pancakes. Do you want some? Lena's stomach growled before she could answer. I don't want to impose. You're not. He always makes too many anyway. Sophie stepped fully into the room. Are you feeling better? Better than what? Than last night. You looked really sad. Kids and their brutal honesty. No filter, no pretense, just straight observation that hit like a punch. I was having a bad day, Lena said carefully. Dad says bad days don't last forever, that you just have to get through them one at a time. Sophie climbed onto the bench at the end of the bed, swinging her legs. Is today better? Was it? Lena wasn't sure. The panic from yesterday had settled into something duller, but no less overwhelming. Grief, maybe. Or the slow realization that she had no idea what came next. Ask me later, she said. Sophie accepted this with a solemn nod. Pancakes are getting cold. Dad says you should come down when you're ready. She hopped off the bench and disappeared, leaving the door open behind her. Lena got dressed in yesterday's clothes, the only ones accessible without unpacking her entire suitcase. Brushed her teeth with the spare toothbrush she found in the bathroom cabinet, still in its wrapper. Tried to do something with her hair and gave up. Downstairs, the kitchen was full of noise. Thomas and Marcus were arguing about whether chocolate chips counted as a breakfast food, while Adrian flipped pancakes with the patience of someone who'd had this conversation 1,000 times. They're fruit adjacent, Thomas insisted. How are chocolate chips fruit adjacent? They come from cocoa beans. Beans are plants. Plants are basically fruit. That's the dumbest logic I've ever heard. You're the dumbest logic I've ever heard. That doesn't even make sense. Your face doesn't make sense. Adrian pointed his spatula at them. If you two don't knock it off, nobody gets chocolate chips. Or faces. Sophie saw Lena first. She came. I told you she would. All eyes turned toward her. Lena froze in the doorway, suddenly self-conscious in her wrinkled clothes and unmade face. Morning, Adrian said, like having a strange woman appear in his kitchen was completely normal. Coffee? Please. He poured her a mug from a pot that looked industrial grade. Pancakes are almost ready. You eat breakfast? Sometimes. The lie came automatically. She ate breakfast when Marcus mandated it, when there was time, when she wasn't too nauseous from stress or fertility drugs, or the growing realization that her marriage was falling apart. That means no, Thomas translated. Dad, she's doing the thing you do. Adrian glanced at Lena, something knowing in his expression. What thing? The thing where you say you're fine, but actually you're not eating because you're too busy working or stressed or whatever. Sophie noticed it last month. Thanks for that observation, Thomas. Just saying. Adrian slid a plate across the island to Lena. 3 pancakes, perfectly golden, butter melting in a pool on top. Eat. And don't argue with me in front of the kids. Sets a bad example. The manipulation was so obvious it almost made her smile. Almost. She sat down at the island and picked up a fork. The pancakes were better than they had any right to be. Fluffy and rich, with just enough sweetness. She ate mechanically at first, then with actual appetite, finishing all 3 before she realized what she'd done. When she looked up, Sophie was watching her with satisfaction. Told you Dad makes good pancakes. The morning passed in a blur of noise and activity. The kids wanted to play in the snow, which meant hunting for boots and gloves and hats, while Adrian insisted everyone layer properly. Lena watched from the sidelines, not sure if she was supposed to participate or disappear. You coming? Adrian asked, pulling on a coat. I don't have snow gear. There's stuff in the mudroom from my wife. Probably fits. The casual mention of his dead wife made Lena's chest tighten. He said it so matter-of-factly, like grief was just another fact of his life, not something that demanded reverence or careful handling. I don't want to intrude on your family time. You're not. He tossed her a jacket from the closet. Besides, if I don't have backup out there, the boys are going to gang up on me in the snowball fight. I need all the help I can get. The jacket fit reasonably well. So did the boots and gloves Sophie handed her with the authority of someone who'd done this before. Outside, the world had transformed into something from a postcard. Everything was white and clean, the storm from last night leaving at least a foot of fresh powder. The kids were already waist deep in it, shrieking and throwing snow at each other with abandon. Lena stood on the porch, breathing in air so cold it burned, and felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not happiness exactly, but not the crushing despair from yesterday either. Something in between, something like, maybe this won't kill me. You know how to make a snowball? Adrian appeared beside her, already packing snow between his gloves. It's been a while. Like riding a bike. He handed her the snowball he'd made. Thomas is the easiest target. He's too busy trying to build a fort to pay attention. You're encouraging me to attack your kid. I'm encouraging strategic warfare. Different thing. Before she could respond, Marcus, young Marcus, nailed Adrian in the back with a snowball. Sneak attack, the kid yelled, already running. Adrian took off after him, moving fast enough that Marcus's laughter turned into genuine squeals. Sophie materialized next to Lena. You should hit Thomas while he's distracted. This 8-year-old was absolutely recruiting her into some ongoing sibling war. Lena looked at the snowball in her hand, then at Thomas, who was indeed focused on building a wall of snow. What the hell? She wasn't dead yet. She threw the snowball. It hit Thomas square in the shoulder. He spun around, betrayal written all over his face. Dad, the guest is on Sophie's team. That's not fair. All's fair in love and snowball fights, Adrian called back, currently being pelted by both boys while Sophie cackled with glee. And then it was chaos. Everyone against everyone, alliances forming and breaking, snow flying in every direction. Lena found herself laughing, actually laughing, as she dodged a throw from Marcus and immediately got hit by one from Adrian. Traitor, he yelled at her, grinning. You said all's fair. I lied. They played until everyone was soaked and freezing, and Sophie's face was so red from the cold, Adrian called timeout. Back inside, he made everyone change into dry clothes and distributed hot chocolate like it was medicine. Lena borrowed sweats from the same closet that had produced the jacket, rolling up the waistband twice so they'd stay on. When she came back downstairs, the kids were sprawled in the living room with some animated movie playing on a TV the size of her first car. Adrian was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove that smelled like tomatoes and garlic. Making lunch? She asked. Soup. Figured everyone could use something warm. He glanced at her. You settle in okay? Your wife was taller than me. Yeah, she was. No sadness in his voice, just statement of fact. Catherine. She'd have liked you, I think. You don't know me. I know you're good with kids. Know you can throw a decent snowball. Know you didn't run screaming when Thomas explained his theory about aliens living in the ocean. He added something to the pot that sizzled. That's enough. Lena leaned against the counter, watching him cook. Can I ask you something? Sure. What do you do for work? Investment firm, financial advising, asset management, that kind of thing. He said it like it was boring, which it probably was to him. Nothing exciting, but successful. Successful enough. He tasted the soup, added salt. Why? Just trying to figure out if this is real or if I'm going to wake up and find out it was all hypothermia hallucinations. That got a smile out of him. If it helps, I'm wondering the same thing. Doesn't usually snow this hard this early in December. They stood there in comfortable silence while the soup simmered and the kids argued over who got to pick the next movie. It felt domestic in a way that made Lena's chest ache. This wasn't her life. This kitchen, these kids, this man who made soup from scratch and coached snowball fights. She was just passing through. A stranger who'd stumbled into their world because she'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Except it hadn't been the wrong time. If Sophie hadn't seen her, if Adrian hadn't stopped, if any of a dozen small things had gone differently, she'd probably be dead right now. Frozen in a bus shelter because she'd been too proud and too broken to ask for help. Thank you, she said quietly, for stopping, for bringing me here, for all of it. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. You're welcome, but you don't have to keep thanking me. You're not a burden, Lena. You're just someone who needed help. The words settled something in her chest, not fixed her, not made everything okay, but acknowledged that she was human, that needing help wasn't the same as being weak. Lunch was loud and messy, the kids talking over each other while Adrian refereed arguments about whether crackers were required with soup or just optional. Lena ate and listened and tried not to think about what came next, but eventually the afternoon wore on and she couldn't avoid it anymore. She found Adrian in his office later, working on a laptop while reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when she knocked. "Can we talk?" "Course." He closed the laptop. "What's up?" Lena stayed in the doorway. "I need to figure out my next steps. I can't stay here forever." "Why not?" The question threw her. "Because this isn't my house. Because you have your own life. Because you think you're imposing." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Look, I'm not saying you have to stay permanently, but if you need time to get on your feet, the room's yours. No strings, no timeline." "I can't pay you. Not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" He considered this. "Honestly, help with the kids. I work long hours sometimes. Having another adult around who they trust, that'd be worth more than rent." It was too generous, too easy. There had to be a catch. "I'm not a nanny," she said. "Good. I'm not hiring one. I'm offering a place to stay in exchange for occasional help." He met her eyes. "You can say no. I'm not going to guilt you into anything. But if you need time and space to figure out what's next, this is a safer option than most." Lena thought about her $243, about the job market in December, about going back out into the cold with nowhere to go and no one to call. "Just until I find something," she heard herself say. "A month? Maybe 2. However long you need." That night, lying in the guest room that was starting to feel less foreign, Lena plugged in her phone for the first time since yesterday. It buzzed to life with a flood of notifications. 12 missed calls from Marcus's mother, 7 texts from her ex-husband's lawyer, 3 voicemails she didn't listen to, and 1 email from Marcus himself, subject line, regarding our separation. She deleted it without reading it. Whatever he had to say didn't matter anymore. He'd made his choice. Now she'd make hers. She'd stay here. Just for a little while. Just until she could breathe again. And if Adrian Cole and his 3 kids happened to make her feel more like a person than her own husband ever had, well, that was nobody's business but her own. 2 weeks in, Lena still woke up every morning expecting to find herself back in the bus shelter, or in some cheap motel with stained carpets and a door that didn't lock properly, or anywhere except a guest room with Egyptian cotton sheets and a view of the garden buried under snow. But every morning, there it was. Sunlight through cream curtains, the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. The sound of Sophie singing off-key in the bathroom she shared with her brothers, which always led to Thomas banging on the door and yelling about how long she was taking. Normal chaos. The kind Lena had never had growing up, and definitely hadn't found with Marcus. She'd fallen into a routine without meaning to. Up by 7, shower, downstairs to find Adrian already dressed for work, and the kids in various states of getting ready for school. He'd hand her coffee without asking, black, the way she liked it. She'd help Sophie with her hair while Adrian refereed arguments about who got the last Pop-Tart. Then the morning rush, backpacks, lunches. "Where's my homework? Did you brush your teeth?" "Yes, I did." "No, you didn't. I can smell your breath from here." Adrian would herd them toward the door like cats, patient but firm, and Lena would stand in the kitchen watching this orchestrated madness with something that felt dangerously close to longing. This morning was no different. Thomas couldn't find his math textbook. Marcus had forgotten to pack his gym clothes. Sophie wanted to wear her summer sandals despite the snow still thick on the ground. "Not happening," Adrian said, holding up winter boots. "Try again." "But these are ugly." "They're warm, and they have traction. You're not breaking your ankle because you wanted to look cute." "Mom would have let me." The words came out casual, throwaway, but Adrian's expression shifted for just a second. Something sad and far away before he locked it down. "Mom would have made you wear 2 pairs of socks with those boots. Nice try." He handed them to Sophie. 5 minutes or we're late." Lena had learned not to intervene in these moments. They had their rhythms, their history. She was still the outsider, even if they'd stopped treating her like one. Adrian grabbed his briefcase and coat, checking his watch. "I've got meetings until 3. Should be home by 4, but if something comes up, my assistant has your number." "We'll be fine," Lena said, like she'd said every morning for the past week. He paused at the door. "Thomas has piano at 4:30. Sophie's got that play date with Emma at 5. Marcus, basketball practice at 6. I know, I wrote it down." Something crossed his face that she couldn't quite read. Relief, maybe. Or surprise that she'd actually remembered. He'd been managing this alone for 3 years, she'd learned. Just him and a rotating cast of nannies who never lasted more than a few months because the kids were picky and Adrian was particular, and finding someone who could handle both was apparently impossible. Lena wasn't trying to be that person. She was just helping out, temporary, until she figured out what came next. Except 2 weeks had become 3, and she still hadn't looked for an apartment or a job or any of the things she was supposed to be doing. The divorce papers from Marcus's lawyer were sitting unopened in her suitcase. Her ex-mother-in-law had stopped calling, which probably meant Marcus had told her some version of events that painted Lena as the villain. She should care about that, should be angry or hurt or something. Instead, she just felt numb whenever she thought about her old life, like it had happened to someone else. The kids thundered down the stairs, Sophie still arguing about the boots but wearing them anyway. Adrian did a final check, backpacks, lunches, coats zipped, then looked at Lena. "You okay?" The question caught her off guard. "Why wouldn't I be?" "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're here, but also not here." He softened his voice. "If you need a day to yourself, just say so. I can work from home." "I'm fine," she said, and hated how automatic it sounded. Adrian studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "All right, but the offer stands." Then they were gone in a flurry of goodbyes and reminders, and Sophie yelling that she forgot her show-and-tell project. The house fell quiet in that sudden way it did every morning, going from chaos to stillness in the space of a heartbeat. Lena stood in the kitchen, surrounded by breakfast dishes and abandoned homework papers in a house that wasn't hers, feeling completely untethered. She cleaned up, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down counters that didn't need wiping, tried to fill the silence with purpose. The house was too big when everyone was gone. Too many rooms, too many echoes. She'd started avoiding the West Wing entirely because it felt too much like trespassing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Forgot to mention, grocery delivery coming at 2. Can you put the cold stuff away?" She typed back, "Sure." Another buzz. "Thanks. You're a lifesaver." She stared at the words longer than she should have. Marcus used to text her orders disguised as requests. Reminders that she was there to serve a function, not because he valued her. Adrian's messages were different, straightforward, no passive-aggressive subtext. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. She spent the morning doing things that needed doing, laundry, because 3 kids generated an obscene amount of dirty clothes, tidying the playroom that somehow exploded overnight despite everyone being at school. Small tasks that made her feel useful instead of like a freeloader. The grocery delivery arrived at 1:50. A guy in his 20s with a dolly full of bags, way more than Lena had expected. "This for Cole?" he asked, checking his tablet. "Yeah." He started unloading. 6 bags. 8, 12. Lena stood there trying to figure out how much food a family of 4 went through in a week. This looked like enough to feed an army. The delivery guy must have seen her expression. "Mr. Cole always orders like this. Says he likes having options." Or he was feeding an extra person now and adjusting accordingly. The thought made her stomach twist. She put away the cold stuff like Adrian had asked, then started on the rest out of habit. Fresh vegetables, fruit that actually looked ripe, fancy cheese she'd never heard of, bread from a bakery instead of the grocery store. The pantry was already well stocked, but Adrian had ordered more anyway. Crackers, pasta, canned tomatoes, soup. Enough food that no one would go hungry, even if the world ended tomorrow. Lena had grown up with a mother who bought day-old bread and stretched hamburger meat with oatmeal, had married a man who spent more on his car payment than most families spent on rent, but monitored Lena's grocery receipts like she was embezzling. This abundance felt wasteful and comforting in equal measure. She was putting away the last of it when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Mrs. Carter?" A woman's voice, professional. "This is Rebecca Chen from Morrison & Associates. I'm calling regarding your divorce proceedings." Lena's hand tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Your husband provided it. I understand this is difficult, but we need to schedule a meeting to discuss asset division, and I don't have any assets. Nevertheless, there are papers that need to be signed. Mr. Carter is hoping we can expedite this process." Of course he was. Probably already had someone else lined up. Someone whose body worked the way his mother thought it should. "I'll call you back," Lena said. Mrs. Carter, I really must insist. She hung up, then immediately regretted it because now this lawyer would call back and keep calling until Lena dealt with it like an adult. But she wasn't ready. Wasn't ready to sign papers that made her marriage officially over. Wasn't ready to face the reality that 6 years of her life had been reduced to legal documents and asset division. The phone rang again, same number. She let it go to voicemail, then sat down at the kitchen island and put her head in her hands. This was ridiculous. She was 30 years old, living in a stranger's house, hiding from a divorce lawyer like a coward. She needed to get her life together, needed to find a job, find an apartment, stop pretending this temporary arrangement was anything other than charity. The front door opened. Too early for the kids. Adrian must have forgotten something, but it was Sophie who came barreling into the kitchen, coat half off, backpack dragging behind her. "Why are you home?" Lena asked, alarm spiking. "Are you sick?" "Half day. Teacher conferences." Sophie climbed onto a stool. "Dad forgot to tell you, didn't he?" "Apparently. He's been forgetting stuff a lot lately. Last week he missed Thomas's science fair." She said it matter-of-factly, no blame. He felt really bad about it. Lena tried to remember if Adrian had mentioned a half day. She'd written down everything else in the notebook she kept by the fridge, but there was nothing about today. "Want a snack?" she asked. "Can I have the cookies, the chocolate ones?" "Does your dad usually let you have cookies at 2 in the afternoon?" Sophie gave her a look that was pure calculation. "He's not here." "Nice try. Apple or crackers." "You're mean." "I'm practical. Pick one." Sophie sighed dramatically, but accepted the apple slices Lena cut up. Emma's mom lets her have cookies whenever she wants. Emma's mom also let her get gum stuck in her hair last month. "You want that to be you?" "No." "Then trust me on this." Lena sat down across from her. "How was school?" "Boring. We had a substitute and she made us do worksheets the whole time." Sophie took a bite of apple. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you going to leave?" The question hit harder than it should have. "What makes you think I'm leaving?" "Because everyone does. We had 4 nannies last year. They all said they'd stay, and then they didn't." Sophie's voice got smaller. "Did we do something wrong?" Lena's chest ached. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why do they always leave?" How was she supposed to answer that? How could she explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes people left not because of anything you did, but because they had their own problems, their own lives, their own reasons that had nothing to do with you? "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I'm not leaving right now, okay?" "Promise?" Lena shouldn't promise. Shouldn't make guarantees she might not be able to keep. But Sophie was looking at her with those hopeful eyes, and Lena couldn't bring herself to add more uncertainty to this kid's life. "I promise," she said, and hoped she wasn't lying. The boys got home an hour later, loud and complaining about homework. Lena made them snacks, actual healthy ones, despite protests, and supervised while they worked at the kitchen table. Thomas had algebra that made her head hurt. Marcus had a book report he'd clearly been putting off. "It's not due until Friday," he insisted when she asked about it. "It's Wednesday." "Exactly. I have time." "Or you could not wait until the last minute and stress yourself out." He gave her a look that said she didn't understand his process. Fair enough. She barely understood her own. Adrian got home at 4:15 looking harried. "Sorry I'm late. Conference call ran over." "It's fine." "Thomas? Piano in 15 minutes. Go get your books." Thomas groaned but complied. Adrian watched him go, then looked at Lena. "Sophie got home okay?" "Half day, which you forgot to mention." He ran a hand through his hair. "I completely spaced. I'm sorry." "It's fine. She was fine. We're all fine." "Still, I should have—" His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "I need to take this." "Can you handle piano?" "I don't play." "Just drop him off. It's 10 minutes down the road. I'll text you the address." Before she could argue, he was already heading to his office, phone to his ear, voice shifting into professional mode. Lena looked at Thomas, who'd reappeared with his piano books. "Guess I'm driving you." "Dad's car is nice," Thomas said. "He lets me pick the music." The car was indeed nice. Some luxury SUV that probably cost more than Lena had made in 2 years at her last job. It started with a button and had more settings than she knew what to do with. Thomas directed her to the piano teacher's house, a modest colonial with a grand piano visible through the front window. "I'll be back in an hour," Lena said. "Sometimes it goes long. Mrs. Patterson talks a lot." "Then I'll wait." She did wait, sitting in the driveway with the heat running and NPR on low. Her phone buzzed. The lawyer again. She declined the call. Then another text from Adrian. "Can you grab Sophie from Emma's after piano? I'm stuck on this call." She typed back, What's the address?" He sent it. Then, "You're amazing, thank you." That word again. Amazing. Like she was doing something extraordinary instead of just being a functional adult. Except it did feel extraordinary, in a weird way. Having someone rely on her, trust her with their kids, believe she was capable of handling things instead of treating her like she might break at any moment. Thomas emerged from his lesson right on time, complaining that Mrs. Patterson had made him play scales for 20 minutes. "Scales are important," Lena said, mostly because it seemed like something an adult should say. "They're boring. Most important things are." They picked up Sophie from Emma's house, a chaotic place with 3 kids and 2 dogs, and a mom who looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Sophie chattered the whole drive home about Emma's new trampoline and could they please get one too. "Ask your dad," Lena said. "He always says no." Then there's your answer. Back at the house, Adrian was still in his office, door closed. Lena could hear him on the phone, voice tense. She got dinner started, chicken she found in the fridge, vegetables that needed using. Nothing fancy, just functional. Marcus appeared at 6:15, dropped off by a teammate's parent from basketball practice. He looked sweaty and exhausted. "Shower before dinner," Lena said, "but I'm hungry." "Then shower fast." He grumbled, but obeyed. 20 minutes later, they were all sitting around the table, except Adrian, who was still on that call. Lena had set his plate aside, covering it to keep it warm. The kids ate like they were starving, complaining about teachers and homework and the general unfairness of life. Lena listened and asked questions and felt that weird disconnect again. This was someone else's life she was borrowing. These weren't her kids. This wasn't her table. Adrian finally emerged at 7:30, looking drained. "Sorry," he said, dropping into his chair. "That was complicated. Your dinner's in the microwave." He looked surprised, like he'd expected to fend for himself. "You didn't have to. I was already cooking." He reheated his plate and ate while the kids did homework around the table. Sophie was working on spelling words, Marcus on that book report he'd been avoiding, Thomas on math that looked painful. "Need help?" Adrian asked Thomas. Lena already explained it. Adrian glanced at her. "You know algebra?" "Barely, but I can read a textbook." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite gratitude. Something deeper. Like recognition. The kids finished their homework and scattered. Sophie to watch TV, the boys to their rooms. Adrian helped Lena clean up the kitchen, working in comfortable silence. "You're good with them," he said finally. "They're good kids." "They are. But that doesn't make them easy." He loaded the last plate into the dishwasher. "The nannies we had before, they lasted a month, maybe 2. The kids would get attached and then they'd leave and it would start all over again." Sophie mentioned that. "Of course she did." He leaned against the counter. "I stopped hiring people after the last one quit. Figured I'd manage on my own rather than keep putting them through that." "So what changed?" "You." He met her eyes. "They like you, actually like you, not just tolerate you because I'm paying you to be here. You're not paying me." "Exactly, which makes it real." He paused. "I know you said this was temporary, and I'm not trying to pressure you into anything, but if you wanted to stay longer, if you needed more time, the offer stands." Lena's throat tightened. "I can't live here forever." "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to stay until you're ready to leave. That's all." "Why?" "Because you fit." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "You fit here. With them. With—" He stopped himself. "Just think about it." Then he headed upstairs, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts, and a kitchen that was too clean and a life that was too comfortable. She should leave, should thank him for everything and find somewhere else to go. Stop pretending this was anything other than temporary charity. But when she went upstairs later, Sophie's light was still on. Lena knocked softly. "Come in." Sophie was in bed, hugging a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Can't sleep? Lena asked. Not really. Sophie scooted over, making room. Will you stay for a minute? Lena sat on the edge of the bed. What's wrong? Nothing, Sophie hugged the rabbit tighter. I like having you here. It feels different. Different how? Like we're a real family. Not just Dad trying to do everything by himself. The words cut deeper than they should have. You are a real family. I know, but it's better with you. Sophie looked up at her. You're not going to leave like the others, right? You promised. Lena thought about the lawyer's calls, about Marcus and the divorce papers and the life she was supposed to be building, about the fact that she was 30 years old and living in someone else's guest room and falling in love with someone else's kids. I'm not leaving, she heard herself say. Not yet. Sophie smiled and closed her eyes. Good. Lena sat there until Sophie's breathing evened out, then quietly left the room. Adrian was in the hallway, leaning against the wall like he'd been waiting. She okay? He asked quietly. She's worried I'm going to leave. Are you? Lena looked at him, this man who'd stopped for a stranger in a snowstorm, who made pancakes for breakfast and remembered to buy the specific crackers Sophie liked, who was raising 3 kids alone because he'd chosen to. I don't know, she said honestly. That's fair. He pushed off the wall. For what it's worth, I hope you don't. He paused. We need someone like you here. He said we instead of they, and the distinction mattered. Lena went back to her room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. The lawyer had left 3 voicemails. Marcus had sent 2 emails. His mother had texted something about how disappointed she was. She deleted all of it without reading. Then she opened her notebook and looked at the schedule she'd written for tomorrow. Thomas had soccer practice. Sophie had dance. Marcus needed help with his science project. She added a note at the bottom. Call lawyer back. Maybe. Then she crossed out maybe and wrote eventually. She'd stay, just a little longer, until she figured out what came next. And if that turned into weeks or months or something she couldn't quite define yet, well, she'd deal with that when it happened. For now, she had 3 kids who needed her and a man who'd given her a second chance at being human. That was enough. Eventually became 3 months. 3 months of mornings that started with coffee and chaos, afternoons spent ferrying kids to activities, evenings around the dinner table where Lena had somehow earned her own chair, the one next to Adrian, where she could reach Sophie's plate when the girl inevitably needed help cutting something, and where Thomas would lean over to show her funny videos on his phone that Adrian pretended not to see. 3 months, and she still hadn't called the lawyer back. The divorce papers sat in her suitcase, buried under clothes she'd finally unpacked into the dresser Adrian had cleared for her. She knew she needed to deal with them. Knew Marcus was probably getting impatient, that his lawyer was racking up billable hours trying to track her down. But every time she thought about picking up the phone, something stopped her. Sophie needing help with a school project. Thomas wanting her opinion on his piano recital piece. Marcus, young Marcus, asking if she'd come to his basketball game on Saturday. Life kept happening, and the divorce kept not. It was early March when everything shifted. The snow had finally melted, leaving the yard a muddy mess that the kids tracked through the house, despite Adrian's increasingly desperate reminders about taking off shoes at the door. Lena had stopped trying to keep the floors clean and just mopped twice a day instead. She was in the kitchen making lunches when Adrian came down, already dressed for work but looking distracted. "Morning," she said, handing him coffee before he could ask. "Thanks." He took it but didn't drink. Just stood there holding the mug, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "I need to go to New York." The words came out flat, final. Lena's stomach dropped. "For how long?" "A week, maybe 2. There's a merger that's falling apart and they need me on site to salvage it." He finally looked at her. "I wouldn't go if it wasn't critical." "Okay. The thing is," he set the mug down, "I can't take the kids. They've got school, and Thomas has that piano competition next weekend, and Sophie's got her birthday party." "I'll handle it," Lena said before she could think better of it. Adrian blinked. "You sure?" Was she sure? She'd been here 3 months, and the longest she'd been alone with all 3 kids was maybe 4 hours when Adrian had an emergency at work. A week was different. A week was real responsibility. not just helping out. I'm sure, she said, lying through her teeth. Relief flooded his face. I'll leave my assistant's number, and my lawyer's in case anything legal comes up. And my accountant has access to the house accounts, so if you need anything... Adrian, she put a hand on his arm. We'll be fine. Stop spiraling. I'm not spiraling. You're definitely spiraling. He laughed, short and tight. Maybe a little. Then his expression sobered. Lena, if this is too much, it's not. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. And the scary thing was, she meant it. He studied her face for a long moment. When did you become indispensable? Probably around the time you stopped leaving post-it notes with instructions on where everything is. I still do that. Not as many. She handed him his briefcase. When do you leave? Tonight. Red-eye to JFK. He checked his watch. I should be back by the 18th, maybe sooner if the meetings go well. The 18th was Sophie's birthday. Lena had already ordered the cake, planned the party, sent invitations to half of Sophie's second-grade class. Adrian had been stressed about missing it, but they'd agreed it would be fine if he was back by evening. We'll hold down the fort, Lena said. Just try not to murder anyone in New York. No promises. The kids took the news better than expected. Thomas just shrugged and said Lena knew his schedule anyway. Marcus asked if he could stay up later since Dad wouldn't be there to enforce bedtime. Nice try, Lena said. Bedtime's not changing. Worth a shot. Sophie was quieter. She helped Lena pack Adrian's suitcase that night, carefully folding shirts the way he'd taught her, making sure he had enough socks. You're going to miss my birthday, she said, not quite accusing. Adrian knelt down to her level. I'll be back by dinner, I promise. What if you're not? Then Lena will make sure you have the best party anyway, right? Lena nodded from the doorway. Right. Sophie didn't look convinced, but she hugged her dad tight when the car came to take him to the airport. They all stood on the front porch watching the taillights disappear, and Lena felt the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders like a physical thing. All right, she said, more to herself than the kids. Let's go inside before we freeze. The first 2 days were fine. Lena had their routines down cold by now. Morning rush, school drop-off, afternoon pickups, homework supervision, dinner, bed. She could do this in her sleep. Day 3, Thomas came home with a fever. I'm fine, he insisted, face flushed and eyes glassy. Lena pressed the back of her hand to his forehead. You're burning up. Couch now. But I have homework. We'll still be there tomorrow. Go. She texted Adrian. Thomas has a fever, taking him to urgent care if it's not better by tonight. His response came immediately. Keep me posted. Call if you need anything. The fever broke by evening, but Thomas was miserable and clingy in a way 12-year-olds usually weren't. Lena sat with him on the couch, letting him doze against her shoulder while some nature documentary played on low volume. Sophie appeared in her pajamas. Is Thomas dying? He has a cold. He's fine. He looks terrible. Thanks, Sophie, Thomas mumbled, really feeling the love. I'm just saying. She climbed onto the couch on Lena's other side. Can we watch something else? I don't care about penguins. Thomas picked. Thomas is asleep. She had a point. Lena switched to one of those baking competition shows Sophie loved, and they watched people stress over fondant until Sophie started nodding off too. Marcus found them like that an hour later, Lena sandwiched between 2 sleeping kids, trying not to move and wake them. Need help? He whispered. Can you get Thomas upstairs? Between the 2 of them, they managed to get both kids to bed without fully waking them. Lena tucked Sophie in, brushed hair off her forehead, and felt something shift in her chest. This was terrifying, having people depend on her like this. But it also felt right in a way nothing had in a long time. She checked her phone before bed. A text from Adrian. How's Thomas? Fever broke, he's sleeping. You're a miracle worker. Just did what you would have done. Doubt that. I would have panicked. The admission made her smile. Perfect Adrian Cole panicking over a kid's fever. It made him more human somehow. Go to sleep, she texted back. You've got meetings tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. Day 4, the school called. Marcus had gotten into a fight. Lena's heart stopped when she saw the number on her phone. Hello? Miss Carter, this is Principal Morrison from Riverside Middle. We need you to come pick up Marcus. There's been an incident. An incident. That could mean anything from he talked back to a teacher to he burned down the gym. What kind of incident? I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Fantastic. She left Thomas with the neighbor, a grandmother type who'd brought over soup when she heard he was sick, and drove to the school with her stomach in knots. Marcus was in the principal's office, lips split and knuckles red. Another kid sat across from him, also banged up. The principal looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Marcus started it, the other kid said immediately. Because you were being a jerk, Marcus shot back. Language, Principal Morrison warned. Both of you. Lena sat down next to Marcus. What happened? He called you names, Marcus muttered, not looking at her. What? Dylan said... He stopped, jaw tight. He said stuff about you. About how you're not our real mom, and you're just some charity case Dad took in. So I hit him. Lena's chest tightened. She looked at the principal. Is this true? Morrison sighed. According to witnesses, Dylan made some unkind comments. That doesn't excuse physical violence, but we're addressing both issues. Dylan's mother showed up 15 minutes later, and the whole thing devolved into accusations and defensive parenting. Lena just sat there, processing the fact that Marcus had gotten in a fight defending her. This kid who wasn't hers, who'd only known her 3 months, had split someone's lip because they'd insulted her. They left with a 3-day suspension and a lecture about conflict resolution that Marcus clearly wasn't listening to. In the car, Lena waited until they were on the highway before speaking. You can't hit people. I know. I don't care what they say. Violence isn't the answer. I know. So why'd you do it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Because he was wrong. You're not charity. You're... He stopped. Your family. The word hit her like a punch to the chest. Family. This kid who'd lost his parents, who'd been bounced through the system, who'd learned not to get attached because people always left. He was calling her family. Marcus, I know you're going to leave eventually, he said, staring out the window. Everyone does. But you're here now, and Dylan had no right to talk about you like that. Lena pulled over. They were on a side street, nowhere important, but she couldn't drive and have this conversation at the same time. Look at me, she said. He did, reluctantly. I'm not leaving. You say that now, No. Listen to me. She waited until she had his full attention. I'm not perfect. I mess up. I burn dinner, and I don't always know what I'm doing, and I'm probably breaking a dozen parenting rules every day, but I'm not leaving. Not today, not next month, not when things get hard. You're stuck with me. Understand? Marcus's eyes went suspiciously shiny. Promise? I promise. He nodded once, sharp, then looked away. Can we go home now? Yeah, we can go home. That night, she called Adrian. How bad is it? He asked as soon as he picked up. 3-day suspension, but he's fine. I should come back. You should finish your meetings. I've got this. Lena, he got in a fight. That's not... I should be there. He got in a fight because some kid insulted me. We talked. We're good. She paused. He called me family, Adrian. Silence on the other end. Are you still there? She asked. Yeah, I'm... His voice was rough. Yeah. Is that okay that he said that? Is it okay? He laughed, but it sounded choked. Lena, I've been trying to figure out how to ask you to stay permanently for the past month. The fact that Marcus beat me to it is just... He stopped. Of course it's okay. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest. You want me to stay permanently? Yes. But not because I need help with the kids or someone to manage the house, because... He exhaled. This probably isn't the conversation to have over the phone. Then when? When I get back. We'll talk, really talk. A pause. If you want to. I want to, she said quietly. Okay. Good. That's good. They hung up and Lena sat there in the dark kitchen, phone in her hand, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted. The rest of the week passed in a blur. Thomas recovered from his cold. Marcus served his suspension without complaint, spending the time helping Lena prep for Sophie's party. Sophie's actual birthday was on Friday, and Lena made pancakes shaped like hearts for breakfast, let her open presents early, and generally bent every rule about sugar consumption. Best birthday ever, Sophie declared, frosting on her face. Party's not until tomorrow. Still the best. Saturday morning, Lena woke up at 6 to start setting up. Balloons, streamers, a table full of snacks that would probably give half the kids a sugar high. The cake was perfect, a castle, because Sophie was currently obsessed with princesses. Adrian had ordered it months ago before the New York trip, and the bakery had delivered it exactly on time. By noon, the house was full of 8-year-olds running in every direction. Lena had recruited Thomas and Marcus to help supervise, which mainly meant keeping kids from killing themselves on the stairs or breaking anything expensive. She was in the kitchen refilling juice when she heard the front door open. Adrian appeared, tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, looking exhausted but present. "You made it," Lena said. "Caught an earlier flight." He scanned the chaos in the living room. "How bad is it?" "Everyone's still alive. No major injuries. I'm calling it a win." He smiled, real and warm. "You're incredible." Before she could respond, Sophie spotted him and shrieked, "Dad!" She crashed into him hard enough to nearly knock him over. "You came!" "Of course I came. Wouldn't miss it." He picked her up, even though she was getting too big for it. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." "Lena made everything perfect. We have a castle cake and everything." "I see that." His eyes met Lena's over Sophie's head. "She's good at that." The party wound down by 4. Parents collected their sugar-crashed children, thanking Lena profusely for hosting. She waved them off, too tired to process compliments. When the last kid left, the house looked like a tornado had hit it. Balloons everywhere, wrapping paper scattered, cake crumbs ground into the carpet. "I'll help clean," Adrian said, already rolling up his sleeves further. "You just got back from New York. Go rest." "I slept on the plane." "Liar." He smiled. "Little bit." They cleaned in comfortable silence, the kids upstairs playing with Sophie's new toys. When the living room was mostly restored, Adrian sat down on the couch with a sigh. "I hate New York," he said. "Meetings went bad?" "Meetings went fine. I just hated being away." He looked at her. "We should talk." Lena's pulse kicked up. "Now?" "If you're ready." She sat down, leaving space between them. "I'm ready." Adrian leaned forward, hands clasped. 3 months ago, I stopped because Sophie saw someone who needed help. I didn't know you. Didn't know if you'd stay an hour or a day. But you're still here, and somewhere along the way, this stopped being temporary. "For me too," Lena said quietly. "The kids love you. They trust you. Sophie wants you at every school event. Thomas asked your opinion on everything. Marcus got suspended defending your honor." He paused. "And I don't know when it happened, but I started looking forward to coming home because you'd be there. Started planning my day around having dinner with you. Started feeling like we were building something real." Lena's throat tightened. "Adrian, I'm not asking you to be their mother. They had a mother. I'm not trying to replace Catherine." He met her eyes. "But I'm asking if you want to stay, not as help, not as temporary, as part of this family, as—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "As what?" Lena whispered. "As someone I love." The words hung in the air between them. "You love me," she repeated, testing the shape of it. "Yes." No hesitation. "I love you. And if that's too much too soon, I understand. But you asked what I wanted, and that's the truth. I want you here. I want—" Lena kissed him. It wasn't planned. Wasn't thought through. She just leaned over and pressed her lips to his, stopping the words that were making her chest hurt in the best possible way. He froze for half a second, then kissed her back. Gentle at first, then deeper. His hand came up to cup her face, and she leaned into it, into him, into this impossible thing that was happening. When they broke apart, she was crying. "Hey," Adrian said softly, wiping tears with his thumb. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." She laughed, watery. "I thought I was broken. Marcus said I was defective, and I believed him. And then you stopped at that bus shelter, and you didn't see someone defective. You just saw someone who needed help." "You're not broken," Adrian said firmly. "You never were." "I can't have kids." "I know. I have 3 already." "But—" "Lena," he took her hands. "I'm not Marcus. I don't need you to give me children. I need you to be you. To be here, To keep burning dinner and making Sophie laugh and teaching Thomas algebra. That's what I need. She kissed him again, harder this time, trying to convey everything she couldn't put into words. He pulled her closer, and she went willingly, fitting against him like she'd been made for this exact spot. Dad? They broke apart to find all three kids standing in the doorway, staring. Are you guys kissing? Sophie asked, delighted. Yes, Adrian said, not letting go of Lena's hand. Is that okay? The kids looked at each other. Some silent sibling communication passed between them. Depends, Thomas said. Does this mean Lena's staying? If she wants to, Adrian said, looking at her. Three pairs of eyes turned to Lena, waiting. She thought about the bus shelter, about Marcus's cruel words and the divorce papers still unsigned in her dresser, about the lawyer's calls she'd never returned and the life she'd left behind. Then she thought about pancake breakfasts and snowball fights and Marcus defending her honor, about Sophie's gap-toothed smile and Thomas's piano recitals, about Adrian coming home early just to make his daughter's birthday, about belonging somewhere for the first time in her life. Yeah, she said, throat tight. I want to stay. Sophie cheered and launched herself at Lena, who caught her out of pure instinct. The boys piled on, and suddenly she was buried under kids and laughter and the overwhelming feeling of being exactly where she was supposed to be. Adrian's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her and the kids into a messy group hug that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Welcome home, he said quietly, just for her. And for the first time since that December night, Lena believed it might actually be true. The divorce papers finally got signed on a Tuesday in late April. Lena sat across from Marcus at a coffee shop halfway between his office and the house, Adrian's house, her house, she still wasn't sure what to call it, and watched him slide the documents across the table with the same detached efficiency he'd used when ending their marriage. My lawyer says this is fair, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. You're not asking for alimony, so it should be quick. I don't want your money, Marcus. I know, you made that clear. He tapped his pen against the table, a nervous habit she'd forgotten he had. So you're really staying with him? The billionaire? The way he said it made it sound like an accusation, like she'd traded up instead of just found somewhere she fit. I'm staying with a family that wants me, she said carefully. There's a difference. Is there? He leaned back, and for the first time since she'd arrived, he actually looked at her. You look different. I am different. Happier. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Yes. Marcus was quiet for a moment, staring at his coffee. I'm engaged. The words should have hurt, should have felt like betrayal or vindication or something sharp. Instead, Lena just felt tired. That was fast, she said. We've been seeing each other for a few months. Since before... He stopped. She's pregnant. And there it was, the real reason for the rush. The reason he'd had his lawyer calling every week, pushing for signatures. Congratulations, Lena said, and meant it. Marcus blinked. You're not angry? Why would I be angry? You wanted kids. You're getting kids. She picked up the pen. I hope it works out better for you than we did. She signed every page without reading them. Her lawyer had already reviewed everything, confirmed Marcus wasn't trying to screw her over. She was walking away with nothing, but she'd come into the marriage with nothing anyway. Fair was fair. When she slid the papers back, Marcus gathered them quickly, like he was afraid she'd change her mind. For what it's worth, he said, standing. I'm sorry for how I handled things. You deserved better. Yeah, Lena said. I did. He left without another word, and she sat there with her lukewarm coffee, feeling lighter than she had in months. Not happy exactly, but free. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. How'd it go? It's done. You okay? More than okay. Be home in an hour. We'll be here. Home. She'd said it without thinking, and this time it didn't feel like a lie. The house was chaos when she got back. Sophie was crying in the kitchen because someone, probably Marcus, had eaten the last of her special cereal. Thomas was practicing piano so aggressively the whole downstairs rattled. Marcus was nowhere to be found, which meant he was either hiding in his room or had climbed out a window to avoid whatever family drama was unfolding. Adrian was in the middle of it all, looking harried. Tell her she can have regular cereal, he was saying to Sophie. But it's not the same. It's cereal. It's literally all the same. You don't understand anything. Adrian saw Lena and his whole face changed. Relief, affection, something else she was still learning to name. Thank God you're back, he said. I'm losing this argument. Lena set down her purse and crouched next to Sophie. What's wrong, sweetheart? Marcus ate my cereal and Dad won't buy more until the weekend and I need it for breakfast. Why do you need that specific cereal? Sophie's face crumpled. Because it's the one Mom used to buy. The room went quiet. Even Thomas's piano playing stopped. Adrian knelt down next to Lena. Soph, you know we can get more. We just need to go to that store across town, and I don't have time until... I'll go, Lena said. Right now. You stay here and make sure the boys don't kill each other. Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? Really? But you have to eat regular cereal tonight. Deal? Deal. Lena grabbed her keys and headed back out. The store was 30 minutes away, and the cereal in question was some overpriced organic thing that came in a box the size of a paperback. She bought 3 boxes, just in case, and made it back before dinner. Sophie hugged her so tight Lena could barely breathe. Later, after the kids were in bed and the house had finally settled, Adrian found her in the kitchen putting away dishes. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know, but you did anyway. Because it mattered to her. Lena dried her hands. She's 8. The world feels huge and scary and out of control. If I can fix one small thing, why wouldn't I? Adrian crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the past 4 hours. Slacking, he kissed the top of her head. I love you. I love you too. It still felt foreign saying it out loud. They'd been together 6 months, if you counted from that first kiss, which Lena did, but she was still getting used to the idea that someone could love her without conditions, without expecting her to be someone she wasn't. Adrian pulled back just enough to look at her. So it's really over? With Marcus? Signed, sealed, delivered. How do you feel? Honestly, relieved. She leaned against the counter. He's engaged, getting married again, having a baby. Adrian's expression shifted. Lena, I'm okay. Really. And she was. He's getting what he wanted. I'm getting what I didn't know I wanted. Everyone wins. You're sure? Adrian, I spent 6 years trying to be someone I wasn't for a man who only wanted me when I was useful. I'm not doing that anymore. She took his hand. I want this. You, the kids, the chaos, all of it. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but if that changes, it won't. But if it does, you tell me. Promise? Promise. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, and Lena thought about the woman who'd sat freezing in a bus shelter 7 months ago. How she'd believed her life was over. How she'd thought being unable to have children made her worthless. She'd been so wrong. Summer came fast. School let out, and suddenly Lena had 3 kids underfoot all day, every day. Thomas wanted to go to music camp. Marcus needed new basketball shoes every other week because he kept growing. Sophie decided she wanted to learn guitar, then changed her mind and wanted to do ballet, then changed her mind again and settled on art classes. Lena handled it all with a mix of patience and strategic bribery. You're a natural at this, Adrian said one night after a particularly chaotic day involving paint in places paint should never be. I'm making it up as I go. Isn't that what all parents do? Parents. He'd said it so casually, but the word hit her hard. I'm not their parent, she said carefully. You're the one who gets them up in the morning, makes sure they eat vegetables, helps with homework, and threatens to ground them when they're being jerks. What else would you call it? I don't know, support staff? Adrian laughed. You're more than support staff. But I'm not their mom. No, he agreed. You're not Catherine. But you are someone who loves them and takes care of them and shows up every single day. That counts. Lena wanted to believe him. But there was a part of her, the part that still heard Marcus's voice calling her defective, that worried she was playing house, pretending it's something she could never really be. The doubt came back full force in July. They were at the community pool, all 5 of them, and Sophie was showing off her newly learned dive. Other families were scattered around, and Lena was hyper-aware of the looks they got, the questions in people's eyes about who she was, how she fit into this picture. A woman approached while Adrian was in the water with the kids. 50s, expensive sunglasses, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your family is beautiful," she said. "Thanks," Lena said, not bothering to correct her. "How old are your children?" There it was, the assumption. "They're 8, 10, and 12. "You must have started young." Lena could have corrected her, should have, probably, but something stubborn in her chest made her just smile and say, something like that. The woman launched into a story about her own kids, and Lena half listened while watching Adrian toss Sophie into the water, her shrieking laughter carrying across the pool. When the woman finally left, Adrian climbed out and sat next to her, dripping everywhere. "What was that about?" he asked. "She thought I was their mother." "What'd you tell her?" "I didn't correct her." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "How'd that feel?" "Weird. Good. Scary." She looked at him. "Is that okay? That I didn't correct her?" "Lena, you can tell people whatever you want. If you're comfortable with them thinking you're their mom, that's fine. If you're not, that's fine too. There's no script here. I just don't want to overstep." "You couldn't overstep if you tried." He took her hand. "The kids adore you. They'd be thrilled if you wanted to be more than just Adrian's girlfriend." The implication hung in the air between them. "Are you—" Lena's voice came out scratchy. "Is that a hypothetical? Depends. Would you want it to be?" Before she could answer, Marcus came running over, soaking wet and excited about something. The moment passed, but it stayed with her for days after. More than Adrian's girlfriend. What did that even mean? She found out 3 weeks later. They were having dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, when Adrian cleared his throat in that way that meant he had something important to say. "So," he started, "I've been thinking." "Dangerous," Thomas quipped. "Hilarious. As I was saying," Adrian shot his son a look. "I've been thinking about the future, about what this family looks like moving forward." Sophie perked up. "Are we getting a dog?" "No." "Why not?" "Because we talked about this." "Focus." He turned to Lena. "I know we've only been together officially for 6 months. I know this is fast, but I also know that I don't want to do life without you." Lena's heart started doing complicated things. "The kids and I talked," Adrian continued, "and we're all in agreement." He pulled out a small box from his pocket. "Lena Carter, will you marry me?" The kitchen went completely silent. Lena stared at the ring, simple, elegant, exactly her style, and felt tears starting. "You talked to the kids first," she managed. "Of course, this affects them too." She looked at Sophie, who was bouncing in her seat, at Marcus, who was trying to look cool but failing, at Thomas, who just grinned. "You're all okay with this?" she asked them. "Are you kidding?" Sophie said. "We've been waiting forever for Dad to ask." "It's been 3 days," Adrian said. "That's forever." Lena laughed, crying at the same time. "This is insane." "Completely," Adrian agreed. "Is that a yes?" I can't have kids, you know that, right? This is it, the 3 of them. No babies, no—" "Lena." Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. "I have 3 kids. I'm 42 years old. I'm not looking for more children. I'm looking for a partner, someone to build a life with. That's you." "But—" "No buts. Do you want to marry me or not?" She looked at the 4 of them, this impossible family that had found her in a bus shelter and decided she was worth keeping, and realized the answer was obvious. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I want to marry you." The kids cheered. Adrian slid the ring on her finger and kissed her while Sophie made gagging noises, and the boys groaned about PDA. It was perfect. Messy and loud, and nothing like the formal proposal Marcus had done at that expensive restaurant all those years ago. It was real. They got married 3 months later in the backyard, nothing fancy, just family and close friends, and the kids standing up with them. Sophie was the flower girl and took her job so seriously she made everyone laugh. The boys fought over who got to hold the rings, and Adrian had to split the duty between them to keep the peace. Lena wore a simple dress she'd found at a boutique downtown. Adrian wore a suit and cried during his vows, which made everyone else cry, which made Sophie announce loudly that weddings were too emotional. When they were pronounced married, the kids tackled them both in a group hug before they could even kiss. "Our turn first," Thomas said. "Then you can do the gross stuff." Adrian laughed and pulled all of them close. Fair enough. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Lena was officially a Cole, though the kids still called her Lena because that's what felt right. She didn't need them to call her mom. Didn't need the title to know she mattered. They had their bad days. Days when Thomas was moody and sullen, when Marcus pushed boundaries, when Sophie had meltdowns over things that seemed small but felt huge to her 8-year-old heart. Days when Lena questioned if she was doing anything right, if she was enough for these kids who'd already lost so much. Adrian was there for all of it, reminding her that she didn't have to be perfect, that showing up was enough. "You know what the kids told me last week?" he said one night after a particularly rough day. "They said they couldn't imagine life without you, that you make everything better." They said that. Thomas said you make the house feel less empty. Marcus said you're the only person besides me who actually listens when he talks. And Sophie, he smiled. Sophie said you make the best pancakes and you give the best hugs and you never make her feel stupid for being scared. Lena's throat tightened. "I'm not trying to replace Catherine. I know, and they know that too, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for you." He pulled her close. "Catherine was their mother. She always will be. But you're the person who's here now, loving them, raising them. That matters just as much." 2 years after that December night in the bus shelter, Lena stood in the kitchen making breakfast while chaos erupted around her. Sophie had lost her favorite shoes. Marcus was complaining about a test. Thomas was practicing piano too loud and too early. Adrian came downstairs looking half asleep, grabbed coffee, and kissed her cheek. "Morning," he mumbled. "Morning, your daughter can't find her shoes." "Which daughter?" The question was casual, but it stopped Lena cold. She turned to look at him. "Sophie," she said. "I meant Sophie." "I know who you meant," he smiled, "just making sure you did." The shoes were found under Sophie's bed, naturally, and the morning rush commenced. Lena herded everyone toward the door, made sure backpacks were packed, reminded Thomas about his piano lesson after school. When they were finally gone and the house fell quiet, she stood in the kitchen looking at the mess they'd left behind. Dishes in the sink, backpacks on the floor, Sophie's art project still drying on the counter. Evidence of life, of family, of belonging. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Forgot to tell you, Sophie's teacher wants to meet next week. Something about her reading level being advanced. Can you handle it?" She typed back, "Of course." Another buzz. "You're the best. Love you." "Love you too." Lena set down her phone and looked at the ring on her finger. Thought about the woman who'd believed her life was over because one man told her she was broken. That woman had been wrong about so much. Being unable to have biological children hadn't made her worthless. It had made her available. Available to love 3 kids who needed someone to show up. Available to build a family that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with choice. She wasn't broken. Never had been. She'd just been waiting for the right people to see her worth. The kids came home that afternoon full of stories and complaints and demands for snacks. Lena listened to all of it while making dinner, fielding questions about homework and permission slips and whether they could please get a dog. "Still no," Adrian said when he got home. "You never let us have anything fun," Marcus complained. "You have video games, bikes, and a pool. You're doing fine." At dinner, Sophie announced she'd gotten the lead in the school play. Thomas said he'd aced his math test. Marcus asked if they could go to the basketball game on Saturday. Normal family stuff. The kind Lena used to watch other people have and wonder what it felt like. Now she knew. It felt like Sophie's hand in hers while they walked to the car. Like Thomas asking her opinion on which song to play for his recital. Like Marcus defending her honor even when she didn't ask him to. It felt like Adrian's arm around her shoulders at night. His quiet, "I'm glad you're here," in the darkness. It felt like home. That night, tucking Sophie into bed, the girl looked up at her with serious eyes. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad Dad found you." "Me too, sweetheart." "Do you think Mom would like you?" The question caught her off guard. They didn't talk about Catherine often. It felt like walking on sacred ground. "I don't know," Lena said honestly. "I hope so." Sophie considered this. "I think she would. I think she'd be happy you're taking care of us." "You think?" "Yeah, because she loved us. And you love us too. So you'd probably like each other." The simplicity of kid logic, the idea that love was enough to bridge any gap. "I do love you," Lena said softly. "All of you, so much." "I know." Sophie hugged her stuffed rabbit. That's why you're staying, right? Because you love us? That's exactly why. Good, Sophie yawned, because we love you too. Lena stayed until Sophie fell asleep, then quietly left the room. Adrian was in the hallway, leaning against the wall. How much of that did you hear? She asked. Enough. He pulled her close. You okay? More than okay. She rested her head against his chest. I never thought I'd have this. What, eavesdropping in hallways? She smacked his arm. A family, people who wanted me around, a place I actually belonged. Well, you do, and we're not letting you go. Promise? Promise. They stood there in the quiet hallway of their home because it was hers now, legally and actually, and Lena thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the rejection, the night she'd truly believed her life was ending. If someone had told her then that 7 months later she'd be married to a man she loved, raising 3 kids who'd become hers in every way that mattered, she wouldn't have believed it, but here she was. 5 years later, Lena stood in a crowd of parents at Sophie's middle school graduation, watching her 13-year-old walk across the stage. Thomas was graduating high school the same week, heading to college in the fall for music performance. Marcus was 15 and already taller than Adrian, still playing basketball, and still occasionally getting into fights when someone said something he didn't like. They'd grown up, changed, but the core of them remained the same. And Lena had been there for all of it. The late-night talks when Thomas was stressed about auditions, the basketball games where Marcus played his heart out, the friendship drama that left Sophie crying in her room until Lena sat with her and reminded her that middle school wouldn't last forever. She'd been there, showing up day after day, year after year, not perfect, not always knowing what to say or do, but present. Adrian found her in the crowd, squeezed her hand. You okay? He asked. They're growing up too fast. They're supposed to. I know, doesn't make it easier. Sophie spotted them after the ceremony, diploma in hand, grinning wide. I did it, she yelled, running over. You did, Lena said, hugging her tight. I'm so proud of you. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? Obviously. They went to the same ice cream place they'd been going to for years. The same place Adrian had taken them all after Lena's first official family dinner. The same place they'd celebrated birthdays and good report cards, and Thomas's acceptance to music school. Tradition, history, the building blocks of family. Sitting there with her ice cream melting and the kids arguing about toppings and Adrian's hand on her knee, Lena felt something settle in her chest. This was it. This was the life she'd built from nothing, from a bus shelter and a stranger's kindness and the decision to keep showing up even when it was hard. Worth had never been about her body or what it could produce. Worth had been about showing up, loving fiercely, choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. Marcus had been wrong. His assessment of her value had been based on criteria that didn't matter. She wasn't defective. She was different, and different had led her here, to a family that chose her back, to kids who called her when they needed someone, to a man who loved her not despite her inability to have children, but because of who she was with or without them. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked quietly while the kids debated whether they should get a second round. How lucky I am, she said. We're the lucky ones. Agree to disagree. He smiled and kissed her temple. Fair enough. Sophie turned back to them. Dad, can we please get a dog now? I'm graduating. That's a big deal. Nice try. Still no. You're the worst. And yet you keep me around. Only because Lena makes you bearable. Adrian clutched his chest in mock hurt. Betrayed by my own daughter. She's not wrong, Thomas chimed in, ganging up on me. This is what I get for raising you. They bickered and laughed, and Lena just sat there, soaking it in. This beautiful, messy, chaotic life that had found her when she'd needed it most. She thought about the woman in the bus shelter sometimes. Wondered what she would think seeing this future. Probably wouldn't believe it was possible. But it was. It was possible to lose everything and build something better from the ashes. It was possible to be told you were worthless and prove them wrong by simply existing, thriving, choosing joy. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house had settled, Adrian found her on the back porch. Penny for your thoughts, he said. Just thinking about how different things are now. Better different? So much better. She leaned into him. Sometimes I can't believe this is real, that I get to have this. Believe it, you've earned it. By doing what? By being you, by showing up, by loving my kids like they were yours. He paused. They are yours, you know, in every way that matters. Lena's eyes burned. Yeah, they are. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. Somewhere in the house, Sophie was probably still awake, reading past bedtime. Thomas was likely practicing piano quietly, so he wouldn't wake anyone. Marcus was texting friends, planning whatever teenagers planned. Her family, her home, her life, built from nothing. From a moment of kindness on the worst night of her life. From the decision to trust a stranger and the courage to stay when every instinct told her to run. Worth wasn't something someone else gave you. It was something you claimed, something you built through showing up, loving hard, choosing to see yourself as valuable even when the world said otherwise. Lena had been thrown away by a man who thought her body defined her value, but she'd been found by a family who saw her heart instead. And in the end, that made all the difference. The years that followed were full of the ordinary magic of family life. High school graduations and college acceptances, first heartbreaks and new beginnings. Arguments that felt world-ending in the moment but were forgotten by dinner. Laughter that echoed through rooms and memories that built on themselves. Lena was there for all of it, not as a replacement mother or a perfect parent, just as someone who loved them, who showed up. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.